Even the accident that happened recently is not because we had a bomb blast, but and also it's not like something heavy hit it, but it is because the base was not made properly. The same as a human life. Our human life falls into pieces if we ignore the basis of it. It's not like there's something special about it, but in our life, if the basis or if the basic thing falls apart, then everything falls apart. Even a rock, even the act of rock falling down, it falls if a small stone falls to the ground. It's also like if a tooth hurts, then you feel like whole of your teeth aches. It's the same. Us learning those Buddhist script is also we are learning it in order to have a proper thoughts, and having the proper thought, even the proper thoughts should be based on the thought that you wish to remove all the sufferings and all the agonies of life. When you're living, you aspire for many different things, but all these things that you aspire, they do not have shapes, and they are also not conditioned enough to bring you happiness. So when we say we study or when we go to temples, the most important thing is removing ourselves from those sufferings. If you do not have the thoughts to remove yourself from suffering sincerely, then the sense of Buddhist or the sense of Buddhism will not arise from you. So there is a need for us to understand what is a true suffering. Even the transmigration or even the life that we go through now, there are so many things that we can call as instant suffering. You don't even have to go through the birth and rebirth, but also in our daily lives. The things that you call happiness normally, they are not happiness that doesn't change, but they are instant. They keep changing. They are all these things. And the happiness in this world is not something that brings happiness to you in our everyday life. And also you should try to get over suffering of life, and that provides a basis for your study. And without this motivation, it doesn't matter whether you go to temples or whether you go to church, but in this, the things that you desire, the things that you want, while making the world of your greed, if you use religion, then there's nothing worse than that. That's almost like making rice with the sand. I don't remember precisely where, but there's a saying that all the happiness in this world is followed by suffering. If you look at things that makes you happy, if you look at it for momentarily, for momentarily it looks like happiness, but it causes suffering because you are trying to the happiness that is not existing forever. The happiness that we desire in our life is followed by suffering for sure. If becoming president is a good thing, when you become a president, you become happy. But coming down from the presidency, nothing is worse than that. And also, when you climb up the mountain, you feel difficulty and sometimes you feel happy. But when you try to come down out of mountain, then you feel more difficult. So descending or coming down or removing yourself from it causes more suffering. Also, rich people, when they become poor, they feel more suffering. But if you don't have any money, then and if you become rich, then you feel great happiness. But the thing is, if you didn't have any money and you feel you have some money, then you feel like, oh, you gain some money. But if you, for example, if you say $1 million, but now you have only 1,000, then do you feel happy? Someone gave me $1,000 and I put it in my room, and then I came out and I wondered to myself, do I have to lock the door because I have $1,000 in my room? When there is nothing in my room, then I had no problem whether I open it or whether I just leave it like that. It's the same. You think about your PIN number for your savings bank. If you had 1 million before and if it becomes 10,000, you feel miserable. From 10,000, it becomes 1,000, you feel more miserable. And also, you feel miserable when it becomes $100. And also, you feel the worst when it becomes zero. So let's ask, the money, $1 million, doesn't stay as $1 million forever. So in an attempt to maintain it, you buy the American stock and it also decreases. And also, if you buy American stock in order to save some money, but if the war arises, then the American stock will also become zero value. So the happiness of our life is not something that you can aspire. So don't expect for, don't look for or don't aspire your greed to be fulfilled when you're living. If I say so, then I don't think there will be so many people who will be coming to a monastery. But you just but normally at times when you suffer because of the greed that you have asked for, then you feel like you regret making the choices. When you are young and when you are happily in love and when you wanted to get married, you never listened. But now when you are suffering so much, you wish that you haven't got married before. If I talk about it now, then you understand up to a certain point. But at the time, you never understood. During those times, you were praying for a beautiful son, and after now you have a son given to your daughter-in-law, then you feel like your son is not of much use. And also at times when your son comes and tells you, Mom, I'm buying a house, can you please add for about like $2 million? Even if you give up everything, then you do not have $2 million, then you feel like they are the thieves. But during those time, you pray for 100 days in order to have a son. And because you had son, you ate delicious meals. And everyone was happy that you had a son. During this time, or at this time, you didn't know that something like this will happen. You thought your son and your daughter will never do the same. But you have done the same to your parents. Oh, I guess you haven't done it. But if you think about it, you have also done the same to your parents. So bad of you. You can answer very well. That's why we say it's all fake and it's all void. If you look at those children who are born nowadays, you feel like they have grown up on their own. They often say, "What have you done for us?" But weirdly, if they cannot remember what you have done for them, then you have done the proper thing. Because we have videos nowadays, I think when you grow babies, I think you should take all the videos and make all the evidences and also write up how much money you spent on them, and later you can ask for them. So later you can say, oh, in order to bring you up, I spent more than $5 million, and you can also ask for interest from them. Before someone told me, Venerable Jinok, if I think about nowadays, then I'm so envious that you became a monk. The person was jealous of me. So I thought about two things. Number one was maybe that person is suffering. The other one is not only you're coming back to your senses. That's what I thought. So those people who feel voidness in this life, and also if they aspire to remove themselves from everything that causes iragni, then they start thinking about studying. This is between us, but I don't think this is between us because this is being broadcasted. I heard it is more than a few million people. I was coming out and I got a call from Canada. And he said on Tuesday, 20th of May, he is going to have 2 hours of teaching. So he said, tell him in advance because he's listening to it. This is a very good word. He said he's listening from Canada. I don't know if he's smiling because I'm saying this. So, having the thought of removing your greed and also suffering is the beginning of our study. And then only the flame of your greed will decrease a little. Or else, then you cannot even distinguish whether you are awake or whether you are sleeping. In order to earn money, I believe that time has passed for you already. She's the only one who is answering. The period is already ended from you, right? But if you get older without studying, then for you everything looks void. Then you start wandering around. It becomes an area where everything is lost. 나이가 들어가면 이제 공부를 안 하면서 나이가 들어가면 이제 그런 것이 다 허망해져 버리잖아. 그러면 이제 막 헤매. Just like the lyric says, you wander around. And when you wish to come back home, then you run around to so many different places, and in that way you might not be able to find your own house, and sometimes you also die. So If you wish not to wander around or if you wish not to be lost when you're old, then
치매가 올라 그러면 그냥 막 그 온 데로 산지사방으로 쫓아다니고 막 가다가 집도 못 찾아가지고 어디 그 죽기도 하고 그래서 늙어서
then you have to study very hard.
방황을 안 하려 그러면 더 늙어서 방황 안 하려 그러면
But when I think about it nowadays,
주력 삼매라도 그 주력이라도 부지런히 해야 돼.
in order not to be lost, then you have to recite the mantras very hard too. Do you have any people who is in their 30s?
이제 요즘 생각해 놓고 보니까
Those people who are in 30s, they also have more than half left. But if you're in the 40s or 50s, then most of the good times are gone by, and your hairs are all gray, and your eyesight are also very poor, and they have to wear magnifying glasses in order to see, and they cannot remember well, and you grow old in that way. So whether it's you or me, in reality, we are just preparing for death. I don't know if this might sadden you a little, but we have to prepare for our death. We are not going to live forever. And if we do not prepare for death, then we might wander around or we might be lost in front of death. So you have to pray hard and you have to study hard. And in order to prepare, you have to do good things. I'm scared that you might be doing good things just as an external way. So just because you come to temple, you might believe that you are a nice person. But there are so many people, there are more evil people who go to temples or churches and are being evil. But a lot of people, but from my finding, I found a lot of people who are better off or who are more good people who doesn't go to church or temple.
차라리 절에 안 다니는 것들이 악한 것들이 더 없는 경우도 있어.
So while living, your way of life should change to something good or working for good or working for better.
더 악해져 버려. 또 안 돼. 그래서
Answer me precisely.
평소 살면서는 자꾸 선행을 사는 방식은 선행이 돼야 돼.
Let's see. If do not answer without any meaning, but answer only those. Think about it now. Do you have more of the thoughts of the good deeds? Yes. Then, if you are able to answer so, then it is more than enough.
그렇게 하지 말고 된 사람만 대답하시오. 지금 생각 좀 해보고.
When you're going to eat something delicious, in this I'm not able to do it now. In few weeks, I'll buy this delicious thing to someone who cannot eat it. You think about those, right? Why can't you answer me? Don't you think so? You think about, maybe you wish to buy some spring clothes.
그 생각 같이 하죠. 왜 대답 안 해?
Do you feel like buying clothes for someone who are as much as you bought for yourself? You thought about this, right? You answered me before.
부모 사입으로 갔는데 또는 내 애들 부모 살라 그러는데 그래서 옷 사입기 좀 힘든 사람들 옷 한 벌 내가
You think about those, right?
It
doesn't, you don't think about them, right? Honestly, that thought doesn't arise. But even after eating, you should think about them. Before I was eating a delicious meal with them, and after eating, he said, "Oh, this is very delicious. I want to buy for my parents." And I said, yes, you are a very good son. At least after eating, you remember your parents. But actually, you should think about them before eating.
아이고, 이게 참 맛있네. 우리 어머니 좀 사다 드려야 되겠네. 맞아, 이 참 효자다 그랬어. 먹고 나서라도 생각이 나니까. 근데 사실은 먹기 전에 먹으려고 그럴 때 생각이 같이
The
떠오르는
true good son is someone who remembers their parents even before they buy on their own.
진짜 효부는 어쩌냐면 뭘 옷을 하나 사는데
After buying clothes, if they remember, if they don't remember their parents, or but if they say, "Oh, I have to go out somewhere, so I need new clothes," but my mom or my parents do not require good clothes because they stay in their house, then it becomes a bad son and also bad daughter. Normally, you should have a good thought, and also you should be less angry.
못된 놈이라 그러면 좀 괜찮지만
You should also have less jealousy and greed, and also you should not have a foolish thought.
평소에는 선한 생각이 자주 일어야 됩니다. 성질도 덜 나야 됩니다.
Then only you feel like you are living
시기질투심도
a
적어야
good
됩니다.
life.
멍청한 생각도 좀 없어야 됩니다.
So what is a true compassion? Compassion is having interest in others benefit, which is others' happiness and others' suffering.
몇 번째 단 할 겁니까?
So what is a compassion? Compassion is like the mother having interest in the happiness of your daughter or your kids. We don't call it compassion, but we say this is attachment of love, or we call this affection. But compassion, as stressed before,
관심을 갖는 것은 그거는 자비심 안 그러고
is compassion when that kind of thought arises equally for all living things. When Dalai Lama received the Nobel Prize and he received the prize money, and on the spot he donated all the money to those people who are starving to death in Africa. And the press at the time, they felt it was quite weird. He also said refugees are also going through a difficult time, but Dalai Lama said they're not starving to death, but there are people who are more poor, and there are also children who are starving to death. That's why I want to donate my money to those who need them more.
거기 써야 될 거 아니냐 물어보니까 우리는
So Dalai Lama didn't differentiate those just because they are not his people. He never differentiated them. But the point is where there is hunger. He wanted to cure the hungry. He wanted to cure the suffering. You understand? That's where the point lies. So, for example, if you do not have the sense of equanimity for compassion, then you eventually get mixed up between the relation who you share with the to the Buddhist doctrine who you share the blood, and also with whom those you do not have any relation. In olden times, Buddha, for the people who he does not share any relation, I think he was in a hurry. He tried to shorten his life for 20 years. He also practiced very hard, and also Bodhiparamita. It is not possible for people to achieve that through 500 incarnations. The Maitreya Buddha, who studied together with Sakyamuni, was not able to achieve it. He has also tried to reform the people that he had no relation with so hard, so that when he saw through his supernatural powers of the students' future, he was able to see that they had achieved everything. So Shakyamuni said his life was 100 years, but Dalai Lama said his life is 108 years long. So I requested him if it's not possible for him to live up to 120 years. And he said with a smile that even 108 years, that I will decide after I live up to 90 years old. I know what that means. After he lives until 90, if he thinks that all his duty as per the Buddhist law or Buddhist teaching is done, then he's going to go. Buddha has also said for 20 years, he's going to spend it for the people who does not have relation with him, because he spent all his life trying to work for those who knows. So for the rest of the 20 years, he's going to spend his virtue on those people with whom he does not have any relation. Okay, even those who doesn't know about Buddhism, there are also people who hang balloons, and those who hang balloons there, they can also survive. I'm not going to say who, but and also because Buddha has left 20 years of virtue for those who requires them. Look at it, like for myself, who is very unlucky, the fact that I'm not starving to death is not my virtue. It's not like I go around selling logs, and it's not like I am selling water. From my point of view, I am a very unlucky person. My virtue and my luck is so less that because of the 20 years of virtue that Buddha left, after thousands of years, I'm able to survive feeding well, being fed well. Whether you agree with me or not, that's what I think. So even the virtues he has given to everyone, equally to everyone, whether they believe in Buddhism or not. He left all his virtues in order for us to get it all. So, but we misunderstand and we say, oh, Venerable Jinok is very lucky. And if you think that way, and if you go on with your practice, then in one way you'll break up. When I look at you, I think it's amazing. How can you live in that complicated world? And sometimes I find it very funny. When old people, when old husbands, when they just like stand there and smoke. When I heat up my boiler, then the smokes they arise from the chimney, and I think those people who smoke, they should have the same nostrils as them. Those people who are drunk and who cannot stand on their feet and who cannot earn money, and also who has very bad temper, and also those who turn their table upside down because they are not satisfied with the table. When I see you living with these kind of different people, I think you live an amazing life. Just like the saying that everything has its own pair, it's amazing how you can survive and how you can live like that. But then if you look at it from your husband's point of view, you look like a stone, you are sometimes you're very sharp, you cannot cook well, how you're able to survive. And I think your husband is also tolerating a lot. And also when I see some kids, I wonder how you're able to survive with those mannerless kids. So all the people who are living in this world, they have a lot of patience. That's what I feel. But although it's a tolerance that doesn't help much, you guys have a strong tolerance. That's what I feel at times. So Buddha is left for his 20 years for the good of good of us, and he died 20 years before, and for that reason, the Ara Buddha was scolded because if he had asked Buddha to stay longer, then he could have, which means Buddha could have lived for longer. And I feel if Dalai Lama wants to go away at that age, I want to stop him. Just like we did, others also does not aspire for suffering. We should have interest in other suffering, and we should also have a positive attitude in order to free them from their suffering. Just because you wish to free others from their suffering doesn't mean you have special powers. It's just that you try your best in order to help them to remove their suffering. There is no special way to it, but if you keep doing it, then and one day you will know the ways. When you see those who wants to cry because of their pain, even if you just hold their hand and cry with them, they'll be free from their suffering in a short time. So let's begin with those small things, and we can always strengthen them. Until the time that we achieve samsara, we should aspire that we can end this. I don't think there's anyone in this world who is living in order to be unhappy. Everyone is trying their best in order to stay happy. It's just that they do not know their ways. That's why they keep falling into the pit of suffering. Even though several ferry, those people who onboarded the ferry, and also the owner of the ferry, and also the government who has given the approval of the ferry, everyone wanted happiness, but the person who is operating it, he was trying his best to gain or to give happiness to them, but because of his selfishness, he did not have so much interest in cargoes, in taking care of them. He just wanted his own comfort. He didn't care much about how tight the cargo should be tied up, and instead of the safety of the people, he was more interested in the money that they could earn by putting more people. Because of his extreme selfishness, the problem began. If he had a little bit of selflessness, then maybe even the captain would not have run away like that. I think it's not only my thought, but even in America, it was broadcasted on news that he had humiliated all the captains in the world. All over the world, if the ship is sinking down, then no captain escapes first. If there's only a bit of ship left which is sinking, then the last person standing on the ship should be the captain. We are given them the name, the Chang, which means the boss. And we have not only given him the name for useless reasons.
간장이 아니고 선장이잖아. 간장 된장 같은 거 거기다 풀기라 하지.
Generally, we cannot say the friendliness that a friend or a relative has for us as attachments, but there's a need in order to reduce them, in order to make sure that it does not get more strong. So the pure heart for you, in order to help your relatives, that is not attachment, but if your greed or if your emotions are being mixed up, then it becomes attachment. Therefore, even the act of helping, of course, it doesn't mean we are not asking you to help your relatives or your family, but you should not try to increase the attachment, but you should always try to reduce the amount of attachment. If you go up to the mountain, then there are a lot of things to study. Like pine trees, they also have the pine fruit, and if they grow bigger, then something interesting happens. The fruit of the pine tree, it's closed, and there's a day when it opens. It opens when it's very sunny and when it's very windy. I took my time to look at it. If there's a seed, then there are like wings, just like the wings of a dragonfly, and the cones are stuck like this. From the opinion of the pine tree, if there are branches, it's safer for it if the cones are stuck in this region, which is more safe. But where do they have them? They have it here in the end, where the new sprouts are being born. That too, if you study a pine tree, they do not have it inside, but they have it in the end. Why? When the wind blows, then it moves around. When the wind blows, it dries up and it opens. And when it opens, the seed, it comes out. It's very important in a scientific way. It twirls around and it flies. If it does from the top of the mountain, then sometimes, even if you don't move it, it flies up to 200 to 300 meters. And also, it does not have like so much nutrition, so not even the birds they carry it around. So it moves itself on the wind, through the wind. So the cones are born on at the end of the branches, and when the wind blows, it flies away. But if it flies away, then the pine tree can never see this once again. But it makes sure that it flies as far as it could, and it makes sure that as far as you fly from me, there's more opportunity for you to live. So even you guys, when you had babies in your stomach, but from the moment the baby learns how to talk, the first word that they will do is no. And then at the time of their baby, when they're baby, there is also time when the first teeth grows, and they do listen a bit. And when the time of adolescence comes, then they run away. They always close the door, and they make sure even mother doesn't approach them. And then as an adult, they when they grow, they go out, and they sometimes they do not come home from time to time. And after a while, they grow, and and they get married, and then they all become thieves. They take everything from the house. So these kind of things, you should think of them as natural events, but we have very strong attachment. So even the children who is well grown or who is grown fully, you have them here, and it seems like you're all fools. It's because your attachment is too strong.
근데 우리는 애착이 너무 강해가지고 다 큰 자식까지
Your children who is already an adult, you should tell them, if you're asking for my advice, then I can give you a little advice, but you should do on your own. Then only your children will be able to survive.
다큰 자식 뭐라 그러더라.
For example, if the pine tree had your seeds here and very inside, then everyone would have died. The mother tree would have died, and even the new tree would not have born.
그래야 애가 삽니다.
Even taking care of the problems of your children, or even if you're looking after their interests or their sufferings, you should do it after removing your attachment from their problems. I once heard that because it was very humiliating, or it's not only humiliating, but it was very embarrassing to watch the TV on the news. So I saw it like this, and I heard that one of the politicians on the TV said Koreans are illiterates. But when you say maybe we are illiterates, but that doesn't make sense at all. You're grown as a son in a rich family, and just because you had been brought up in a very wealthy way, you feel like you can say everything, but you should always know what to do. Just like this son of the Kim Sang-yeon, who is the owner of the Hanwha. He was drunk in a bar, and then he got drunk, and he hit up the waiters working there, and then the father called the waiter who hit up their son, and he hit him furthermore. So, but you should not do something like that. If my son had done the same, then I would have hit up my son. But he has done the opposite. Why do you do it in the opposite way? Isn't it so? The child might say, you are the owner of the industry, Hana industry, and you are very rich, and you can even talk to president in person. And although he says all these things, you should make sure that he's grown up in a very proper way. I heard that Sai's father did the same. When you see his interview, he has this look on him. When he had this issue about marijuana, his father came and said, maybe taking this opportunity, you could quit smoking, and he walked away. But you know that Sai's father is also very rich. So the attachment and also affection and also the true compassion, you should be able to make the difference. Then you will not be able to achieve the equanimity. So you should always try hard to
그래서
maintain the
이거를
sense of equanimity
우리가
in you.
애착하고 애정하고 진정한 자비심하고 이걸 갖다
So even when you go and see the teachers of your student,
예?
do not go
자꾸
and tell
평등성을 유지하려고
do not go and say to them that, oh, would you like to have a meal with me? But instead, you could have just bought a little bread for everyone who is teaching there. That's equal. That sense of equanimity. But instead, you just buy for your children. Instead, you just buy for the teacher of your children. Then other teachers and also the other students, they will become the victims. You should not be confused. You should not be confused about attachment and also compassion.
그러면 다른 아이들도 피해자가 되고 자기 아이도 결국은 피해자가.
If we remove all attachments or all affection, does new compassion arise? No, that's not true.
집착과 자비를
But
공동해서는 안 된다. 집착하고
from that hurt, if you remove your greed and your attachment,
애정의 마음을 갖다 다
then you can develop this pure selflessness. Then that is the compassion.
그건 아니고 뭐냐면
Even though neuralists they speak about it, the region where the selflessness originates, and also the part where you feel the affection for the children, they work in the same region. Buddha spoke about this issue even though he did not know about them.
이 이타심이 나오는 것하고요. 나오는 것하고 그 자녀들에게
But under the notion that we are going to practice, we assume that if we are able to remove all of the affections, then there will be new compassion. But that doesn't work. First, you have to change the affection to the sense of equanimity, and in that way, you can remove the affection, and that is compassion.
새로운 자비심이 뭐 나올 거 아니냐? 그건 그렇게 안 돼.
You understand?
우선 정의 마음을 평등심으로 바꾸는.
In few books, they use the word attachment and word attachment as the word compassion. I don't know where, and I guess Dalai Lama saw these kind of books. But just because the attachment and compassion has a similar side, attachment arises from the misunderstanding of the reality. So the attachment and affection, there is sense of I, the stubborn I, and there's sense of stubborn I, and there is the greed, and because of the greed, if it moves, then we call it attachment. You like it if it fits your greed, and if you don't like it, then you try to remove it. That is difference. But the sense of equanimity arises from the voidness. There is no I which exists forever, and the sense of I was also formed due to relations, and so one day it will disappear too, and you do not treat all mankind as per your greed, but you treat everyone with a sense of equanimity, and therefore you try to remove the suffering of all mankind. If you have this kind of self, we call it compassion. Some says, this is a very good tea, so only you drink it. Then I answer, so when I poured the tea, some sattvas they brought it for me, and she asked me to drink it alone, and she asked me to drink alone, so I'm going to drink it and I'm going to give you the bad tea. Well, of course, it's not like I don't understand what you are trying to say because you respect me and because you like me. You brought me good things to eat and drink. But it's not like I don't understand it. But if the sense doesn't, uh, if your feelings or if your motivation was not brought up in a good way, then it will lead to a bad result.
그 뜻이 잘못되지만 아주 나쁘게 작동한다.
But also clothes.
나는 가만 생각해 보니까 내가
When I ask them to make my clothes, they do it very well because. But when when I request them to do someone else's, then they don't do it. At times like that, I feel really bad. If you have brought a very good tea, then the heart that you bring for me should be so that, please drink it for the benefit of all mankind. If you'd like to offer, then you please offer. And if you'd like to drink, you can also drink it at the same time. If you do it that way, then I feel very comfortable. I'll be really comfortable.
차를 갖다 그래서 드리기도 하고 드시기도 하고 그러십시오. 그러면 내가 엄청 편하겠다는 거죠. 예. 그럼 무지하게.
Also, if you say something like, it seems like you do have a monk robe, but I would like to offer a monk robe. Can you please advise me so? Then I would give you advice on what to do or whom to give. So in order to grow or develop the sense of compassion or even the sense of offering, you also should have this sense of equanimity.
그래서 우리가 자비심을 내는 데는 그 평등심이 보시 정신도 평등심.
On the other hand, compassion does not arise because of the misunderstanding of the reality, but it arises from the motivation in order to save others from their suffering. So, whichever mankind it is, they have different nature of their suffering. They also have a different period for the development of their suffering. There's also different degree of the suffering that they feel. Everything is different. And they also have the different power of attachment. But the uniform thing here is that everyone feels the suffering or everyone feels the agony. But despite the fact that you know that there is suffering and you do not want the suffering, you enjoy the cause of the suffering. I don't know whether it's Mr. Kang Dong-seok. It's him who spoke about it, so I guess I can say because he enjoys drinking so much, he drinks a lot, and he went to bathroom and he slept sitting on the bathroom. And after he woke up a few hours, after a few hours, he felt unconscious in the bathroom, and he couldn't like straighten his back. And so he came out and he tried to eat something, and he went to sauna to sweat out, and he ran, and that way he could control his body a little. And on the next day again, he went out to drink. So he doesn't think about the agony that will follow him after drinking, and just after the momentary treatment, he again enjoys the drinking. So A lot of people come and ask me so many different questions, and they consult me for so many different reasons. Once they said, if I dye my hair, then I get like allergic reaction. What should I do? So I asked him. I asked the person, what do they do in the parlor? And they said they apply lotion in the parlor. And they make sure that it doesn't touch the skin and they color it. Is it so?
그 미장을 해서 어떻게 한답니까 그랬더니 밑에다가 바른데 다 이렇게 저런 걸뭘그 로션인가 뭐 하여튼 구리문지 뭐 바른데 발라가지고
Nowadays they don't do it, but they do it. It's already done out well. But it was me, then I would not just color it. If there is allergic reaction. But here again, you don't want the allergic reaction, but you want your hair to be black.
꽃이 올라오는 건 싫고 머리 비려서 까만 거는 좋고.
If you look at it from the broad spectrum, then there are two ways to develop the sense of equanimity. The first one is the uncertainty of the relations. So you have to think about the voidness and also suffering, and you also have to observe the uselessness of anger and also attachment. So when you observe, then our life itself is similar to 각주국음. One person once a person was going out selling, and his sword fell into the water. And so he had to mark that this is the spot that the sword fell. And so he marked on the boat. And then he went to the shore and said, my sword fell here. And he was looking for his sword. But the sword is not there. Maybe the boat had already sailed 10 to 20 kilometers, and our life similarly. If you think about it, thinking about the time of your past, then a lot of years has passed by. You cannot find it. Can you find yourself back to the short hair back during the time of your high school? Why do you think they're suffering? The owner of the sword, even if he went down to the sea to find it, he's not able to find it, and he fears a great suffering. And our time, it just passes by. It does not rest. Even our time, per second, there is 8.4 million times of wave, and it flows by. It does not rest at all. So we are beings that does not stop for a moment, and we are void things. But just like Hakjugugam, you are trying to find it, just like the mark that you have marked on the boat. That once upon a time I was like this. Once upon a time things are like this. This kind of things, they are valueless. They are meaningless. They have no use. That's why you feel miserable. If you ask the question that if you're attached and if you would like to stay or stagnant or be stagnant, can you? You cannot. If there's something that is forever, then you desire to stay forever, but
그럼 내가 딱 애착해서 집착을 하면 머물 수가 있느냐 하면 머물 방법이 없어.
if you also look at Brahmins,
그 자체가 이 세상
they feel that they could
실체라도 있으면 그거라도 붙들고 내가 뭘 해보겠는데 지금 바라문이나 이런 사람들은 영원한 아가
they could stay to the value that they wish to. But as you know, you cannot stay. You cannot stay the same. That's why you should not have the sense of you should not cling on to the life. After some time, we will just fly into the universe as a fine dust. The funny thing is, even the universe is about 1 billion, more than 1 billion years. Professor Hopkins was so intelligent, he counted it all. So you have to think about them in detail. The object of your obsession, there's nothing. But everything changes, even our heart changes. But the question here is, although everything changes, how are you going to change it in a positive way? That is karma, the power of change. If you change it in a good way or positive way, then the result will be positive, and they will become the cause of your happiness, and things will change in a gradual way. But if you continue it in an evil way, then since the karma doesn't change, then it will just keep on creating agony for you. That's why, because there is no object to be obsessed on because your attachment, you should grow the sense of equanimity. But we say if there are many children, then there is no finger that doesn't hurt if you bite. But if you bite it, then there are parts which hurts more and which doesn't hurt more. Even if it's the same children, there are some parts like that, isn't it? Even if it's the same children. Biting them all, it all hurts. But even if it's the same child, there are some child which you love more and which you hate more, and there are some child which you want to kick them out. Even your child, you have the sense of difference. It's not equal. We live in such a world where there's so much difference, and we do not have the sense of equanimity. What time is it in Canada? I think it should be about 12. I don't think they're listening because they're sleeping. I think there is about 11 hours difference. And also, if you think about this way, if you hate someone, that is really a meaningless thing. If you hate others, then you suffer. Even the act of hating causes agony, but even the act of liking someone causes agony. That is a problem. That is a problem. So hating someone and also the creating the sense of hatred and also developing the sense of attachment. That's why Buddha said, do not develop the sense of hurt. Do not develop the sense of hatred even if someone comes and chops your hand, and also do not have the sense of gratitude if someone comes and operates surgery and sticks your hand back. So I understood when he said do not hate, but I don't understand do not be grateful. I read for so many times.
고맙다는 생각은 이해가 되는데 고쳐줬는데 고마운 생각은 하지 말라 그러나. 그거 내가 어릴 때 옛날에 내가 그 우리말 팔만
I read the Tripitaka Koreana when I was little for so many times, and because I heard so many times not to hate someone, I understood, but I didn't understand why not to have the sense of gratitude. And it usually happens in the Southeast Asia Buddhists. If you offer something, that they do not say thank you, but they just stay still. Even if when you go out to beg for food, or even if they go out to ask for the offering, they do not even ask. They just stay still, and they do not even ask for what sort of food they want, but they just eat whatever is given to them. So even offering and also receiving the food, there is no discrimination. They do not try hard to get more because some good food is given from some rich families. Then only the sense of equanimity will be well maintained. The second method is by observing or by looking at the fact that all mankind desire happiness, and also they are all beings that desires to be free from agony, and also by treating every other beings without the sense of discrimination. So although this looks very basic, you will have to think about it in detail. There is no being in this world that does not desire to be happy, whether it's animal or whether it's people. They 100% they desire for happiness. There is no being in this world that wants to be unhappy. So the best thing that we can do as a human is trying to listen and try to prefer the happiness that they desire. Therefore, if you wish to be happy from other suffering, then that will cause a lot of problems. If you feel that others' happiness is your suffering, then there is nothing more worse than this.
남의 불행을 통해서 내가 행복하겠다라고 한다면 그거는 큰일 날 수도.
You should feel like if the other person is rich, then you should feel like I'm very happy to know that you live a rich life, but instead you try to develop the sense of, oh, maybe he's solid, or maybe he cheated someone, but you shouldn't. Look at the Sewol ferry accident. The media should know what to say. Actually, even the president is a victim, isn't it? Although there are things that she has done wrong, I'm sure that because she's also human, she will also feel bad at hurt. And if there are mistakes, then we should always ask for mistakes. But even the families of the victims, they're also victims. Even the citizens of Korea, we are all very upset, and we are also all victims. And looking at them, the media did the wrong interview, and they someone used it as a means to develop the election to win their vote. They have encouraged this kind of mistrust for the government. It's almost like pouring salt on the other's wounds. If that kind of sense is developed, it should never happen. There's not much that we can do, and therefore you should always try to see what you can do. Even the divers, when they go down to sea, they cannot see more than 20 centimeters. They cannot even check the oxygen tank.
이게 시야가 20cm밖에 안 나온다. 진짜 촬영한 화면을 보니까 이 앞이 안 보여. 바로 앞이 안 보여가지고 이게 이게 산소가 다 됐나 안 됐나 그 계기를 보는데 이게 안 보여가지고 말이야.
That's because during this time the moon's influence became stronger, and the water pressure is very strong, and also the area is very narrow. That's why the water pressure is very high.
물이 들어왔다 쫙 빠져나가 이게 크단 말이야. 그 물살이 굉장히 세. 지금은 오늘 조금이죠.
And also the moon's influence is very strong, so even the wave is strong and the water pressure is also very strong, and also all the doors are closed and they are not able to enter.
달 힘에서 달리 올라가. 지금 파도 치는 것은 전부 다 달의 힘이야.
And in order to open them, they should either cut out everything. And also the ship itself is very big. It's about 6.8 tons. And if they want to, even if they want to lift it, if they lift it, then there is a case. In the case that there is someone alive, if you try to lift it, then they put some wires.
혹시나 한 사람이라도 살아있으면 들어올리면 어떤 상황이 벌어지냐면 배가
And because the ship is very heavy, then the ship will break down because of the weight. And even if one person is alive, then it's a big deal. That's why they're not able to make swift decision. I don't think there's anyone who said, let's do it slowly. But even all of us, all of our citizens, we feel their hurt.
그 누구도 빨리 하지 말자. 이건 그렇게 한 사람이 아무도 없잖아.
And also the families of those who met accidents. This is also a disaster. It's a miracle to say that they are alive. And during this time, no one should think of harsh things to tell others. Right now, we should concentrate on everything and try to pay all our attention in rescue. If it's not possible, then maybe we could try. I don't think there's so much power in the prayers, but we should just try to do what we could do. I don't think there's so much you can do even if you go and visit the site.
기도 힘이라고 뭐 별 볼 수 있나? 그렇지만 마음이라도 우리가 모아서 기도라도 해주고 뭐 물자가 모자라거나 그러진
I think we as a citizen, if we have a good idea, then we should try to convey it. And if the best thing that we can do is wait and also try to do something. We cancel all the Buddhist art festival that we planned in advance, but the Buddha's birthday is still pending. And I am hoping that if we come to know about the
그대로 하되
people who
그때가 또 이제
is not being rescued at the
혹시
same
이제
time,
사망자
then maybe you could go and pray for them.
병이라도
Right
걸고
now, at
죽어도
times like
지킬 수
this,
있도록
instead of attacking someone,
생각이
you should try to calm your heart and you
생각이고
should pray.
우리가 해줄 수 있는 것은 지금 그것밖에 없다는 게 너무 괴로워.
Those things which were not
어쩔
done
수가 없는데.
properly, after everything is settled, we could argue with all of them. And even if it's president that has done wrong, then the president should also be taken into justice.
아시겠죠? 잘 못한 것은 뒤에 아주 철저히 이빨을 멘독칼같이 따져가지고 다시는 그런 일이 일어나지 않게끔 해야 돼. 철저히 따져서. 그게 설사 대통령이 잘 못했더라도 그건 대통령.
From this book, the second method for development of the sense of equanimity is being briefly described. Let's do just on this line. Every living thing desires happiness and they do not desire suffering. Think about it. Since the beginning of the samsara, there is no mankind who was not my relative more than 100 times. There is no basis for you to be attached at someone or angry at someone. So develop the heart that you are going to treat everyone equally. The practice of equanimity could begin for those as an object on whom you have no emotions and could develop into someone you love and also someone you hate. And this way you could develop the sense of equanimity.
어떤 것에는 아주 집착하고 어떤 것에는 아주 분노하였던가. 그러므로 나는 모든 유정에게
So when we say we should not have the sense of discrimination, whether it's you or whether it's me, I'm sure that we went through the samsara for thousands of times. If it was not your father or if it was not your mother or if it's not your relatives, then there's no reason for you to meet them.
생각에 보면 여러분이나 나나 수없는 생을 윤회를 했을 거라.
There's no reason for you to meet anyone if you have no relation with them. If you're meeting them in this life and if you have different types of relationships, that means for many years they were your cousins or brothers or siblings or also your parents, or they could also be your neighbors for many years or many lives. If that's so, just because you're a little closer in this life, there's no reason for you to discriminate. There's no reason for you to discriminate.
그랬다면 차별을 해야 될 이생에 조금 가깝고 안 가까운 이걸 가지고 차별을 해야 될 이유가 없는 거야.
So when you look at it, and when you feel that this person is suffering, then maybe for once they were your brothers and sisters, and maybe once they were your parents, and you should think about ways on how you could help them. Sometimes I think about those. Maybe the mothers in the previous life. I think they are here to check if I'm studying well or not. And also, in order to make me study hard, unless until they don't come, there is no reason for me to preach. And so it's more the audience or the person who listens to the teachings. They should have more forbearing patience and you come here and sit for 2 hours and listen. I'm sure that I'm sure that you all feel very bad if someone calls you and asks you to sit for 2 hours every week. And I think where the laws meet against each other. There should be more of sense of equanimity, and I think there are times when it's not when there's no equanimity, at times when you don't feel like coming to temples.
서로 법과 법이 만나는 데서 더더욱이나 평등해야 돼.
If I bow down sincerely and say, Sattva, have you come for? If I greet you very sincerely, then you should know that that means you do not come to temple often. But if you come and say hello to me, and if I just ignore you, and that means even if I leave you just like so, you would come to temple religiously.
저 사람 스님 안녕하세요. 그러면 네 안녕하세요. 그러고 그냥 쳐다보지도 않는다 그래서 저 사람은 냅둬도 잘 다닐 사람이다.
That's almost like if I don't ask the person to study hard, she will not. But if she's someone who would study hard, even if I don't tell her anything, then I just leave her so. And I also don't even speak to her on phone for many times because she will study hard. And even in our everyday life, you live way better than me, right?
그래서 전혀 뭐 전화 한 통화도 잘 안 해. 안 하고 냅둬. 공부 잘할 사람인데.
You live off way better than me, so there is no need for me to say, oh, live in this way or live in that way. Nowadays, few months they speak about the ways of life.
더 잘 사는 거. 그러니까 내가 뭐 세상 사는 거. 그거 그렇게 하지 마시오.
But they should actually be speaking about the ways to get over the agony of life. If you, there's no need for me to tell you, oh, if you do this, that it is good for your health. Maybe if it gets included in the speech, then maybe it could be spoken about. But just because I know how to make kimchi doesn't mean I would sit here and preach how to make kimchi.
얘기하다가 이제 얘가 나오면 조금 간단하게 예로서 하는 얘기들이지 그게 그렇다고 내가 무슨
So because of the attachment that you are being attached to, you have the sense of hatred and also a sense of love, and because of that you feel affection, and also because of that you wish to empty yourselves, and also the sense of discrimination will be developed and you will feel angry. So when you do practice,
애착도 하고 또 막 찬에 뿌리려고 그러기도 하고 하는 이 생각을 계속 일으키는 그 자체가 중생심들이라.
In olden times, because they play so many things with your hair, they have also made all the monks bold. Because there at times, because in the place where monks practice, there should be absolute sense of equanimity. In older times, they had a lot of issue about hairs. They wore different hair designs to show their status and also class. They had boldened the hair so that you don't even wear a hat. And even the clothing. The king wore the king's robe with the dragon embroidery, and also the ministers, they wore red and also blue depending on the class and depending on the position, and also the commons, they wore white clothes. They were not even allowed to color their clothes. And during Joseon Dynasty, the white Avalokiteswara was stressed. When I went to Dachijeon, I saw the
조선시대 때 백이 가늠이 강조됐어. 인도에 따시종에 가니까 따시종 거기서
I was very I was very shocked, and I was very shocked to see the figure of white Avalokitesvara there. It had the same form, same figure, just like the picture that we have in Hunguk Temple. Long hair, wearing the white flower garland, and the cloth was white, and she had the lotus in her hand, and she wore the same clothing as we have in Korean culture. So during Joseon Dynasty, the reason for the emphasis for the white Avalokitesvara was because they wanted to relieve the suffering of those commons who wear white clothes. So, for whatsoever reason it is in a monastery, in order to remove the different class and in order to show the equanimity, they shaved all the hairs, and also even the offering is same, and also the dining is same, and there's no difference for them to give more because they're sitting in a higher seat, or because one is more handsome. But then some people argue that Buddhism is socialist, but it is not socialist. So you all should also have the same hair, but that doesn't mean everyone should have the same hair palms.
그러니까 어떤 놈들은 또 불교 사회주의 아니야? 무슨 사회주의?
You should have the sense of equanimity for everyone. The Dalai said, China invaded your country and they kill about 2 million people. But even to them, you should not have the sense of hatred, or you should not swear like them. And you should also, there's no even try on his behalf that not to spread Buddhism to them. But we should have the very deep and very broad heart.
욕을 하거나 분노심을 일으키거나 그 사람들에게 불법을 전달 안 하려고 그러거나 그러지 않아. 똑같이 그런 것이.
I hope you contact as many people as you can in order to share the Buddhist lyrics. Thank you. Bye bye.